Imagine coming home, and someone else is living in your house. I stood frozen in my own driveway, watching two police officers approach me with their hands resting on their belts, while Barbarossa, HOA, president stood on my front porch, arms crossed, wearing my bathrobe, screaming that I was trespassing in my own house, the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 3 years. Let me back up and explain how I ended up being treated like a criminal at my own home, because this story is so insane that even now, 6 months later, I still can't believe it actually happened. My name is Marcus Chun, and I'm a 34-year-old software consultant. I bought my house in Meadowbrook Hills, a planned community in suburban Atlanta, back in March of 2022. It was a 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a decent backyard, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The neighborhood seemed nice enough. During my visits, clean streets, well-maintained common areas, and the HOA fees were reasonable at $175 per month. What I didn't know during those initial visits was that the HOA was run by a woman named Barbara Witt, a 62-year-old retired real estate agent who treated the Homeowners Association like her personal fief. Barbara was one of those people who had never held real power in her life. So when she became HOA president, she transformed into a tyrant. She was tall, rail-thin, with severely cut gray hair that she kept in a tight bob, and she had this way of looking at you over her reading glasses that made you feel like you'd just tracked mud across her white carpet. For the first year, I managed to fly under Barbara's radar. I paid my HOA fees on time, kept my lawn trimmed to the regulation 3 inches, and made sure my trash cans were never visible from the street after collection day. I thought I was being a model resident. Then came the violations. It started in April of 2020. I received a violation notice because my mailbox post had excessive weathering and needed to be the mailbox was barely 2 years old. I repainted it anyway, $50 for paint and supplies, plus 4 hours of my Saturday. 2 weeks later, another violation. My garden hose was visible from the street. I hadn't realized that garden hoses were supposed to be hidden from view at all times. I bought a hose reel and mounted it behind my AC unit. Cost $90. The violations kept coming, each one more ridiculous than the last. My house numbers weren't adequately visible from the street, even though they were the same brass numbers that came with the house when I bought it. My front door wreath in December was not in keeping with community standards because it had blue ribbons instead of red. My car, a perfectly normal silver Honda Accord, was allegedly parked too close to my neighbor's property line, even though it was in my own driveway, at least 5 feet from the property line. Each violation came with a $50 fine, if not corrected within 14 days. By the summer of 2023, I'd paid over $800 in violation fines, plus spent countless hours and additional money correcting supposed infractions. The worst part wasn't even the money, it was the feeling of being constantly watched. Every time I pulled into my driveway, I'd scan my property anxiously, wondering what Barbara would find wrong this time. I started keeping a detailed log of every violation, including photos and dates. I also started documenting my neighbor's properties. My neighbor Jim at number 42 had a basketball hoop in his driveway, technically against HOA rules. It had been there for 2 years. No violation. The Hendersons at number 38 had installed a non-approved decorative mailbox. No violation. Mrs. Pedersen at number 51 regularly left her trash cans out 4 days after collection. No violation. It was just me being targeted. I tried to fight back through proper channels. I attended HOA meetings and challenged the violations. Barbara would sit at the head of the table in the community center, flanked by her 2 board members, both of whom seemed terrified of her, and she'd listen to my complaints with this thin, patient smile that never reached her eyes. "Mr. Chun," she'd say, drawing out my name like it tasted bad in her mouth, "the rules apply to everyone equally. If you feel you're being singled out, perhaps you should examine whether you're truly following all of our community guidelines." The other board members would nod along. Like the handful of other homeowners who attended meetings would avoid eye contact. Nobody wanted to cross Barbara. By October of 2023, I was at my breaking point. I'd spent over $2,000 in fines and corrections. I'd wasted dozens of hours dealing with petty complaints, My stress levels were through the roof, so when my company offered me a 6-month consulting assignment in Singapore, starting in January of 2024, I jumped at the opportunity. It would be a break from Barbara. I could rent out my house for 6 months, cover my mortgage, and get away from the insanity of Meadowbrook Hills HOA. I listed my house on a reputable rental site in early December. I found a perfect tenant, a young family relocating to Atlanta for work, and we signed a 6-month lease starting January 15th, 2024. The rent was $2,200 per month, which covered my mortgage of $1,800 plus a little extra. I met the family, showed them around the house, and handed over the keys on January 14th. Before he left, I did what I was supposed to do. I notified the HOA of my temporary absence and provided my contact information in Singapore. I sent an email to Barbara directly, plus submitted the form through the HOA portal. I got an automated confirmation email. Everything was documented. I flew to Singapore on January 16th, 2024. The consulting work was intense but rewarding. I was helping a financial services company overhaul their cybersecurity infrastructure. The days were long, but I was making excellent money. Singapore itself was incredible hawker centers, gardens by the bay, the super trees lit up at night. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. No Barbara, no Bulicians. I checked in with my tenants monthly. Everything was fine. They paid rent on time. In February and March, I paid my HOA fees remotely $175 each month. I assumed everything was normal back home. Then, in early March, I got an email from Jenny Parker. "Hi Marcus, we're moving out at the end of the month as planned. We've enjoyed the house, but we're concerned about the HOA situation. You might want to look into it. Good luck!" I tried calling Jenny immediately. No answer. I sent follow-up emails. No response. I was thousands of miles away, with no idea what was happening. My lease with the Parkers ended March 5th. They moved out on schedule, returned the keys, and that was that. The cleaning service sent me photos. The house looked perfect. I had planned to return in late July. But then, in early April, my company asked if I could cut the Singapore assignment short. They needed me back for a major client presentation. Could I be back by April 22nd? They'd cover flight changes and give me a $5,000 completion bonus. I agreed. I wrapped up my work and booked a flight home for April 20th, 2024. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back early. Why would I? It was my house. The flight was 23 hours, including layovers. I landed at 6 a.m. on April 20th, exhausted and I took an Uber home, arriving just before 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. That's when things got weird. As my Uber pulled into my driveway, I noticed something immediately. My front flower beds looked different. When I'd left in January, I'd had a simple landscaping setup with some shrubs and mulch. Now there were elaborate rose bushes, decorative stones, a white picket border I'd never installed, and a small garden gnome near the porch. I'd never owned a garden gnome in my life. I hated garden gnomes. I paid the Uber driver, grabbed my suitcase, and walked up to my front door. The doormat was different to it now, said "Bless this home" in cursive script. My doormat had been a plain brown Cora mat. There was also a wreath on the door, made of dried flowers and ribbons. I pulled out my keys, my mind trying to make sense of these changes. Maybe the Parkers had done some landscaping as a parting gift, but they'd moved out 5 weeks ago. Why would they leave decorations? And who had been maintaining the rose bushes? I put my key in the lock and turned it. The door opened. The smell hit me first, a strong potpourri scent, like artificial flowers and cinnamon. My house had never smelled like this. I stepped into the entryway and froze. My house was completely different. The walls were painted different colors. What had been a neutral beige was now a pale yellow with white crown molding I'd never installed. My furniture was gone, the simple black leather couch, the glass coffee table, my entertainment center, all gone. There was different furniture in its place, floral couches with way too many throw pillows, lace doilies on every surface, decorative plates on the walls arranged in patterns, Family photos in ornate frames. Photos of people I'd never seen before, an older couple at the beach, children at a graduation, holiday gatherings. For a moment, genuine panic set in. Had I somehow walked into the wrong house? Had I gone to the wrong address after such a long flight? But no, this was definitely my house. Same layout. Same kitchen visible from the entryway with the island I'd picked out. Same staircase to the right with a distinctive banister. This was my house, but it looked like someone's grandmother had moved in and redecorated everything. "Hello," I called out, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Is anyone home?" I heard movement upstairs, and footsteps descending quickly. Heavy footsteps, moving fast. And then Barbara Whitmore appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing a bathrobe, my bathrobe. I realized with shock the blue terry cloth robe I'd left hanging in my bathroom because it was too bulky to pack for Singaporean. Her face went from surprised to furious in about half a second. "What are you doing in my house?" she shrieked, her voice going up about 3 octaves. I stared at her, my brain unable to process what I was seeing. Barbara, my HOA, president, in my house, wearing my bathrobe, standing at the top of my stairs. "Your house, Barbara. This is my house. What are you doing here?" "I live here," she screamed, already pulling out her phone from the pocket of the bathrobe, my bathrobe, with shaking hands. "You're trespassing. I'm calling the police." "Trespassing? I own this house." I pulled out my phone, ready to show her proof, mortgage statements, property deed, anything. My hands were shaking now, too, adrenaline flooding my system. But Barbara was already on the phone with 911, and I could hear her voice, high and panicked, putting on what I immediately recognized as a performance. "Yes, hello. There's an intruder in my home. A man just broke in. He's standing in my living room right now. I need police immediately. Please hurry." She was giving them my address. I heard her say 23 Maple Drive, clear as day. "Barbara, hang up the phone," I said, trying to stay calm even though my hands were shaking and my jet-lagged brain was screaming that this couldn't be real. "This is my house. I own this property. I can show you the deed, my mortgage statements, my property tax payments. The police are on their way," she said, backing up the stairs, phone still pressed to her ear, her free hand gripping the banister. "You need to leave now, before you get arrested. I don't know how you got a key or what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but this is my home." "Scam? Barbara, I've owned this house since 2022. You know that. You've sent me dozens of violation notices. You've fined me hundreds of dollars. How can you stand there and—" "I don't know what you're talking about," she shouted, and there was something in her eyes. Was that fear, or was she just a really good actress? "I've lived here for 8 months. I have a lease. I have utility bills in my name. You need to leave right now." I stood there in my own entryway, what used to be my entryway, completely stunned. This couldn't be happening. This was impossible. 8 months. That would be since September of 2023. But I'd been living here until January. I'd rented it to the Parkers from January to March. This was absolutely insane. "Barbara," I said, forcing my voice to stay level, "I have all my documentation. I have my property deed. I have my mortgage statements. I have photos of this house with my furniture in it. I have utility bills." "So do I," she screamed. "The police will sort this out." "You need to wait outside." But I couldn't move. This was my house. Why should I wait outside of my own house? The police sirens started wailing in the distance, getting closer. The sound made it all real. This was actually happening. I was about to be treated like a criminal in my own home, and that's when I realized Barbara had been squatting in my house. The question was for how long, and how the hell was I going to prove this was my home when she apparently had documentation too? I looked around my living room one more time at the floral furniture, the lace doilies, the photos of strangers, and a terrible thought occurred to me. What if she'd somehow forged documents? What if this was more elaborate than I thought? What if she'd been planning this for months? Maybe even since I first moved in. The sirens were right outside now. I heard car doors slamming, heavy footsteps on my walkway I'd paid to have repaired last summer after Barbara had cited me for a crack in the concrete. What would you do if you came home to find your HOA president living in your house? Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare? Drop your stories in the comments. I read every single one, and your experiences might help others dealing with HOA issues. 2 officers walked through my front door. Officers Martinez and O'Brien, according to their name tags, and I could see them taking in the scene. Me, with a suitcase, jet-lagged and confused, and Barbara at the top of the stairs, clutching her phone, her face red and tear-streaked. "Officers, thank God you're here," Barbara cried out, raising her hand to her forehead like she might faint. "This man broke into my home. I was sleeping peacefully. I'm a single woman living alone. I was terrified." Officer Martinez, a stocky Hispanic man in his 40s, held up his hand. "Ma'am, please calm down." "Sir, can you tell me what's going on here?" "This is my house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I've owned this property since March of 2022. I've been working in Singapore for the past 3 months on a consulting assignment, and I just got home this morning. I walked into my own house with my own key, and I found her living here. She's been squatting in my home." "That's a lie," Barbara shrieked, shaking visibly. "I've lived here for 8 months. I have a lease. I have bills. I have proof. This man is trying to scam me." Officer O'Brien, a younger black officer with a calm demeanor, pulled out a notepad. "Okay, let's slow down. Everyone, take a breath. Sir, what's your name?" "Marcus Chun. This is my house. 23 Maple Drive. I can prove every word I'm saying." "And ma'am, your name?" "Barbara Whitmore. And this is my house." "Well, I rent it, but I'm the legal tenant. I don't know what kind of con artist this man is." Officer Martinez looked between us. "You're both going to show us your documentation. Whoever can prove ownership or legal tenancy gets to stay." "Understood." I nodded immediately. Barbara crossed her arms and gave a little satisfied smile, and that smile made my blood run cold. She looked confident, too. Confident. "Mr. Chun, let's start with you," Officer O'Brien said. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. "I have everything digital. I keep all my important documents in cloud storage. Here my mortgage, $1,800 per month to First National Bank. I've been paying since April of 2020. Here's every single payment for 2 full years." Officer Martinez leaned in to look. "That's a mortgage payment, but it doesn't prove this specific address. I have the property deed right here." I scrolled frantically through my files. "Here. Marcus Chun, owner, 23 Maple Drive, Meadowbrook Hills. Purchase date, March 15th, 2022. Purchase price $325,000. There's the official stamp from DeKalb County." Officer O'Brien examined it carefully. "This looks legitimate. Now let me see some identification." I handed over my driver's license, but Officer O'Brien pointed at something that made my stomach drop. "Sir, this license shows your address as 215 Oak Street, apartment 3. Not this address. That's my old address, from before I bought this house. I moved here in March of 2022, and I know I was supposed to update my license, but I just never got around to it. I know that was wrong." I could see the officers exchange a glance. That outdated license was a mistake, and I knew it looked bad. "Ms. Whitmore," Officer Martinez turned to Barbara, "your documentation." And this is where everything went from bad to absolutely terrifying. Barbara Smuldand walked down the stairs with this triumphant air. She went to a decorative table in the hallway and pulled out a thick, organized folder. A folder that had clearly been prepared and ready. "Officers, I'm happy to show you everything." She opened the folder with a flourish. "Here is my lease agreement for this property. Signed September 1st, 2023, for a 12-month term at $1,900 per month." Officer O'Brien studied it carefully. I could see it looked professional, printed on nice paper. Multiple pages. "The landlord is listed as Chun Property Management, LLC." Barbara continued smoothly. "I signed the lease, paid my security deposit of $3,800, and I've been living here peacefully for 8 months. Here are my canceled rent checks up September through April, $1,900 each month. Never late." She spread the documents out on the table, and Officer Martinez examined each one. "Here are my utility bills in my name," Barbara continued. "Georgia Power, Atlanta Gas Light, water services from DeKalb County. All showing this address, all in my name, all paid on time since September." She pulled out stacks of bills: November, December, January, February, March, April. Each one looked official, professional, completely real. "Here's my driver's license." Barbara handed it over. "See. Barbara Whitmore, 23, Maple Drive. I updated my license 2 weeks after moving in, exactly as required by Georgia state law. Tat impassion as required by law was clearly directed at me. Chun Property Management, LLC. I'd never created any such company. Those checks, those bills, they were all fake. Te? Attobi. But they looked real. "Ms. Whitmore," Officer O'Brien said, "can you provide contact information for your landlord, this Chun Property Management?" Of course, Barbara pulled out her phone eagerly. "I have all our email correspondence. We communicate regularly about property maintenance." She started scrolling through emails. "See, here's an email from last month about the water heater making a noise. Here's one from February about landscaping permission. That's when I planted those rose bushes out front. The rose bushes, the garden gnome, the new doormat. She'd been planning this for months, creating a paper trail." "Officers," I said, my voice cracking with desperation, "those documents are forgeries. All of them. I never created any property management company. I never authorized any lease. Those utility bills are fake. This is my house. I can call my mortgage company right now and have them confirm." "Sir, calm down," Officer Martinez said, but his tone had changed. He sounded less sympathetic. "Can I say something?" Barbara's voice was soft now, and she raised her hand slightly, like a polite student in a classroom. "Officers, I'm frightened. This man somehow has a key to my home. He's claiming to own a property I'm legally renting with a valid lease. This feels like identity theft or fraud. Has he stolen the real owner's information somehow?" "No," I practically shouted. "I am the real owner." "Barbara, you know that. Stop lying. You're the HOA president. You've been sending me violation notices for over a year. You'll fine me hundreds of dollars for petty violations." "HOA president?" Barbara's face transformed into pure confusion. She actually tilted her head. "I'm not the HOA president. I don't even know what HOA you're referring to. I'm not involved in any homeowners association. I'm just a tenant, renting a house, trying to live quietly." "You're lying!" I turned desperately to the officers. "She's the president of Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association. I have emails from her. I have violation notices." I grabbed my phone frantically. "Here. Look, Barbara Whitmore, HOA president. I found an email from June of 2023. Dear Mr. Chun, your property has been found in violation of Section 12.4 of the HOA by your garden hose is visible from the street. Please correct this violation within 14 days, or a fine of $50 will be assessed. Sincerely, Barbara Whitmore, HOA president." Officer O'Brien looked at the email, then at Barbara. "Ma'am, are you the HOA president?" Barbara laughed a light, confused sound. "HOA president? No. I'm not on any HOA board. I'm 62 years old. I'm retired, and I live very quietly. I don't even attend HOA meetings. I just rent this house and mind my own business." "That's not true." I was desperate. "She's been the HOA president for years. Other neighbors can confirm it. The HOA website lists her as president." "Sir," Officer Martinez interrupted, "do you have documentation showing you've been living at this address recently? Mail. Recent utility bills. In your name?" I faltered. My utilities were on autopay from my bank account. The Malay had it forwarded to my work office because I travel a lot. "But I have my mortgage statements." "We saw the mortgage papers," Officer O'Brien said, "but they're dated from 2022. We need something more recent. Anything from 2024? I've been in Singapore since January. One rented the house to tenants from January 15th to March 15th. Jennifer Parker was the tenant. She can confirm I'm the owner. Do you have that lease agreement?" "Yes." I scrolled frantically. "Here, liaise agreement with Jennifer Parker, January 15th to March 15th, 2024. $2,200 per month." Officer O'Brien looked at it, and after March 5th, the lease ended. The tenants moved out. The house was supposed to be empty until I returned. But she's been squatting. Since when? I don't know exactly. The tenants sent me an email in March saying something was wrong with the HOA situation, but they wouldn't explain what they meant. They must have discovered her. "Officers," Barbara said softly, raising her hand again. "I've been living here continuously since September 1st, 2023. I've never met any Jennifer Parker. No one has lived here, except me, for 8 months. I have months of utility bills showing constant usage, rent checks showing consistent payments. This man is either confused, possibly mentally unwell, or attempting a scam. Either way, I'm frightened, and I want him removed." The officers looked at each other. "Here's the situation," Officer Martinez said finally. "We have 2 people claiming legal right to this property. Mr. Chun has an ownership deed from 2022, but outdated ID, and no recent proof of residency. Ms. Whitmore has a current lease from September 20, multiple months of utility bills, rent checks, and valid ID with this address. This is a civil matter, not criminal. This needs to be resolved in court." Civil matter? I couldn't believe it. She's squatting in my house. She's committed fraud. "Sir, she has documentation showing legal tenancy," Officer O'Brien said firmly. 8 months of documentation. We cannot remove someone based solely on your word. You need to take this to civil court, hire an attorney, and file an eviction proceeding or fraud claim. But we cannot forcibly remove her today. So she gets to stay. In my house? Mr. Chun, Officer Martinez's voice was firm. You need to leave the property. Ms. Whitmore has shown current documentation of residency. If you believe fraud is being committed, file a police report at the station. Contact an attorney. Take this to court. But right now, you need to leave." Barbara crossed her arms and smiled. Actually smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, satisfied upturn of her lips, but I saw it, and in that moment, I understood everything. She'd planned this. All of it. The fake lease dated to September, the utility bills transferred to her name. The driver's license updated, the months of rent checks to a fake property management company. She'd been waiting for her opportunity, and when I left for Singapore, she'd taken it. The violations, the harassment, the constant targeting, it wasn't just about power. She'd wanted me gone. And now she had my house. "Officers, please. I tried one more time. Can you at least check with the Ask them who the president is. It would take 10 minutes. Officer O'Brien looked at his watch. "Sir, we've been here for 45 minutes. We have other calls. This is a civil dispute. You need to leave now." I looked at Barbara. She stood there in my entrywear in my bathrobe, surrounded by her furniture, looking like a sweet, frightened retiree. "Fine," I said. my voice hollow. "I'll leave, but this isn't over." "I hope not, sir," Barbara said sweetly. "I truly hope you get the mental health help you so clearly need." I grabbed my suitcase and walked out my own front door. Barbara closed my door, locked my locks. Through the window, she gave me a little wave, just a small finger wiggle with that satisfied smile. I was homeless, standing in the driveway of a house I owned but couldn't enter. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just staring at my house. The house I'd saved for years to afford. The house where I'd planned to build a life, now occupied by a woman who'd systematically targeted me and stolen my home. I pulled out my phone and searched for real estate attorney, Atlanta emergency. My hands were still shaking. The first attorney was closed. The second answered after 3 rings. "Henderson Law Firm. This is Craig Henderson speaking." "Mr. Henderson, my name is Marcus June, and I need help immediately. Someone has been squatting in my house. She's forged documents, and the police just made me leave my own property." "I know this sounds insane, but slow down," he interrupted calmly. "Take a breath, start from the beginning. When did you discover this?" I told him everything Singapore, coming home early, finding Barbara, the fake lease dated to September, the utility bills, the police response. My words tumbled over each other, but I managed to get through it. There was a long pause when I finished. "Mr. Chun," he said carefully, "this is one of the most elaborate fraud cases I've heard in 20 years of practice. The forged lease, the fake property management company, the utility transfers this, took serious planning. You're going to need documentation. Everything you've got, mortgage statements, property tax records, OA correspondence, photos of you living there, witness statements, your tenant's contact information, and we need to move fast. Every day she stays there strengthens her claim under adverse possession laws. Can you come to my office Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp?" "Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need." "One more thing," he said sternly. "Don't go back to that house. Don't contact her. Don't send emails. Don't knock on the door. Nothing that could be construed as harassment or trespassing. I know it's your house. I believe you. But legally right now, we need to play this smart. If you violate any laws, it'll hurt our case." "Understood. Understood. Kudba. Bring everything Monday. We'll file an emergency eviction and a fraud complaint. This is going to be a fight, but we'll win." I hung up and drove to Extended Stay America near the airport, $79 a night. I checked in, dragged my suitcase to room 217, and collapsed on the bed. But I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. How had she created such perfect forgeries? And why had she targeted me, specifically? I opened my laptop and started searching. Barbara Whitmore. Atlanta. Barbara Whitmore real estate fraud. Barbara Whitmore HOA president. And that's when I found it. An article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution from March of 2020. The headline made my blood run cold. "Former real estate agent accused of property fraud scheme, multiple victims come forward." I clicked on the article. There was Barbara's photo. Same severe haircut. Same cold eyes behind reading glasses. But what I didn't know yet, what I was about to discover as I read deeper into her past, that this wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. Not even close. Can you believe the police made me leave my own house? Drop a comment if you've ever been in a situation where the system completely failed. I need to know. I'm not alone in this insanity. I sat in that cheap hotel room, my laptop screen glowing in the darkness, reading about Barbara's past, and with every paragraph, my blood ran colder. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution article from March 2020 was detailed and damning. Barbara Whitmore hadn't just been accused of fraud, she'd been convicted. 3 counts of real estate fraud, 2 counts of identity theft, and 1 count of forgery. Her method back then was different, but equally calculated. Between 2017 and 2019, she'd worked as a real estate agent for prestige properties in Atlanta. She'd used her position to access vacant homes that were between owners' properties and probate, foreclosures waiting for bank processing, homes in estate disputes. She'd create fake lease agreements, move in furniture, transfer utilities to her name, and live rent-free. 4 months before anyone discovered her. The article quoted one victim, Michael Davidson, who'd inherited his mother's house in Buckhead. Barbara had somehow obtained keys during the estate settlement process and moved in. She lived there for 7 months before Michael even knew the house was occupied. When he tried to take possession, Barbara showed police a fake lease and utility bills, claiming she was a legal tenant. It took Michael 4 months and $15,000 in legal fees to evict her. Another victim, Sarah Chunand. Yes, I noticed the last name lost her rental property in Midtown for 9 months. Barbara had forged a property management agreement, collected rent from actual tenants, and pocketed every dollar. By the time Sarah discovered what was happening, Barbara had disappeared with over $20,000. The article stated that Barbara was sentenced to 3 years in prison in June of 2020. She was released in December of 2022, 3 months before I bought my house in Meadowbrook Hills. I did the math. Barbara had been out of prison for exactly 3 months when she became HOA president. Had she targeted me from the beginning? Had buying a house in her neighborhood been my original sin? I kept searching. I found Barbara's LinkedIn profile still active, still listing herself as community manager and real estate professional. Her profile photo showed her smiling, looking trustworthy and professional. The perfect mask for a predator. There was no mention of her conviction. Of course, I found the HOA website for Meadowbrook Hills. Sure enough, there was Barbara's photo on the board page. Barbara Witt, president, serving since January 2023. The bio described her as a dedicated community member committed to maintaining property values and neighborhood standards. I took screenshots of everything: the news articles, the LinkedIn profile, the HOA website, the court records I found on the Georgia Superior Court website showing her conviction and sentencing. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Evidence and organized it all by date. Then I started calling Barbara's previous victims. Michael Davidson's number was in an old article. I found him on Facebook and sent a message. Mr. Davidson, my name is Marcus Chun. I believe Barbara Whitmore is defrauding me the same way she defrauded you. Can we talk? He called me within 20 minutes. She's doing it again. Michael's voice was angry, but not surprised. Of course she is. That woman is a professional con artist. What did she do to you? I told him everything. The Singapore trip, the fake lease, the police removing me from my own house. Same playbook, Michael said. The forged documents, the utility transfers, the fake property management. Kapanishi did all of that to me. The only difference is she had a fake lease from my mother's estate attorney. How she got the attorney's letterhead, I still don't know. Listen, I have all my court documents from when I evicted her. I'll email them to you. Your lawyer will want to see them. It proves she has a pattern of this behavior. Thank you. That would be incredibly helpful. One more thing, Michael said, and his voice dropped. Be careful. Barbara is dangerous, not physically violent, but she's calculating. When I finally got the eviction order, she trashed my mother's house. Spray painted the walls, destroyed the hardwood floors, smashed all the light fixtures. Cost me $40,000 to repair. She did it out of spite, and she timed it so she was gone before anyone could stop her. My stomach dropped. She destroyed your mother's house. Completely. And because she was officially listed as a tenant Ivan, with a fake Liz, my insurance wouldn't cover it. They said it was tenant damage, not vandalism. Barbara knew exactly what she was doing. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about my house. My furniture was gone, replaced with hers. What else had she done? Had she damaged things I hadn't noticed in those few minutes before the police arrived? I tried to call Sarah Chun next, but her number was disconnected. I found her on LinkedIn and sent a message. No response. By 3 a.m., I'd contacted 4 of Barbara's previous victims. 3 responded. All told similar stories: fake documents, months of legal battles, thousands in legal fees, and property damage when they finally won. One woman Patricia Holmes, told me Barbara had stolen her identity and opened 3 credit cards in her name, running up $25,000 in debt. She's a predator. Patricia Said. She targets people who travel, people who own rental properties, people who won't notice immediately. By the time you realize what's happening, she's established residency and you're in a legal nightmare. I'm sorry this is happening to you. I finally fell asleep around 4 a.m., my mind churning with information and fear. Monday morning at 7:45 a.m., I was sitting in Craig Henderson's law office with a USB drive containing everything I'd found. Henderson was in his 50s, gray-haired, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He spent an hour reviewing my evidence: the property deed, the mortgage statements, the tax records, photos of me living in the house before I left for Singapore, the lease with Jenny Parker, and most importantly all, the documentation about Barbara's criminal past. "This is good," Henderson said finally. "This is very good. Her prior convictions for the exact same type of fraud will be admissible in court. It shows a pattern of behavior. The judge will see this isn't a simple tenant dispute, it's fraud by a repeat offender." "How long will this take?" I asked. "Normally, eviction cases take 60 to 90 days in Georgia, but we're filing an emergency motion based on fraud and criminal trespass. I'm requesting an expedited hearing. With her criminal history and the severity of the fraud, I think we can get a hearing within 2 weeks. Maybe sooner? 2 weeks. I have to wait 2 more weeks while she lives in my house." Henderson's expression was sympathetic. "I know it's frustrating, but the legal system moves slowly. The good news is that once we get to court, I'm confident we'll win. Her fake lease won't hold up against your property deed and her criminal record. No judge will side with a convicted fraudster over a legitimate property owner. What about getting my stuff back? My furniture? My belongings? We'll file a motion for return of property. But honestly, I'd prepare yourself for the possibility that your things are gone. People like Barbara often sell or dispose of victims' property. I'm sorry to be blunt, but you should know the reality. I felt sick. My furniture, my books, my grandmother's antique clock that had been in our family for 3 generations. The photos I'd left on the walls, all probably gone or sold. "Can I do anything to help speed this up?" I asked. "Yes. Get me witness statements. Talk to your neighbors. Find out if they saw Barbara moving in. Track down your previous tenants, the Parkers, and get a statement from them about the dates they lived there. Get statements from HOA board members about Barbara being president. The more witnesses we have, the stronger our case." I left his office with a mission. I drove straight to Meadowbrook Hills. My first stop was Jim at number 42, the neighbor with the basketball hoop. He answered the door in workout clothes. "Marcus? Hey man, I heard you were out of the country. How was Singapore?" "It was fine. But Jim, I need to ask you something important. Have you seen anyone living in my house, 23 Maple Drive?" Jim looked confused. "Living there? Yeah, that lady moved in a while back. I figured you'd rented it out again after those other people left." "What lady? Describe her." "Older woman, gray hair. Kind of severe looking. She's been there since, I don't know, maybe October, November. She's around a lot. I see her coming and going." "Why?" "Jim, that's Barbara Whitmore, the HOA president." "Wait, what? Barbara? Barbara lives in your house. She's squatting. I came home Saturday and found her living there with fake documents. The police made me leave. I need your help. Can you write a statement about when you first saw her there? Exact dates, if you remember." Jim's face went from confused to angry. "Are you serious? That's insane." "Yeah, absolutely. I'll write whatever you need." "And Marcus, I always thought it was weird how much she targeted you with those violations. Now it makes sense. She wanted you gone so she could take your house." I got similar responses from 5 other neighbors. They'd all seen Barbara coming and going since late October or early November. Several mentioned seeing a moving truck in November. One neighbor, elderly Mrs. Patterson, told me she'd seen Barbara hosting HOA meetings at my house. I thought it was strange, Mrs. Patterson said, because we have the community center for meetings. But Barbara said she was combining her residence with her HOA office duties. I didn't think anything of it. She'd been hosting HOA meetings in my house, using my home as her personal office. The audacity was staggering. Next, I tried to find Jenny Parker. I had her phone number from our rental agreement, but it went straight to a disconnected message. I tried her email, no response. I searched for her on social media and found a Jennifer Parker who matched her age and profile picture. I sent a message explaining the situation. She responded within an hour. "Marcus, I'm so sorry this happened. We tried to warn you. That woman was harassing us from the moment we moved in. She kept showing up, saying she was the landlord, that we were trespassing. She'd come by at night and shine flashlights in the windows. We had to call the police twice. We left early because we were scared. She's mentally unstable. I'll write you a statement and testify if you need me to." I felt a mix of relief and anger. Jenny and her family had been terrorized by Barbara, and I'd been thousands of miles away, completely unaware. By Wednesday, I had 12 witness statements, including Jenny's detailed account of Barbara's harassment. I had photos from 3 neighbors showing Barbara entering my house in November. I had everything packaged up for Henderson. Thursday morning, Henderson called. "Good news. We got our hearing. Next Tuesday, May 7th, 9 a.m., DeKalb County Superior Court. The judge is Margaret Chuno. Relation to you, I assume. No relation. Judge Chun is tough, but fair. I've appeared before her before. She doesn't tolerate fraud or deception. With your evidence and Barbara's criminal record, I'm very confident." What happens at the hearing? Both sides present their case. Barbara will probably stick to her fake lease story. We present your deed, your mortgage records, your witnesses, and her criminal history. The judge makes a ruling. If we win, and I believe we will, Barara gets an immediate eviction order. She has to be out within 72 hours. If she refuses, the sheriff physically removes her. And my property, we're also filing for return of property and damages. If the judge rules in our favor, Barbara will be ordered to return your belongings or compensate you for their value. Enforcing that judgment might take longer, but we'll get it done. I spent the weekend preparing. I organized all my documents. I rehearsed what I'd say in court. I tried not to think about Barbara living in my house, sleeping in my bedroom, using my kitchen, sitting on my couch that was probably already sold. Monday evening, Henderson called again. His voice was tense. "Marcus, we have a problem." My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Barbara filed a countersuit this afternoon. She's claiming that you are the fraudster. She's saying Chun Property Management LLC is a real company, that you stole the company's identity, and that you're attempting to defraud her as a legal tenant. She's also filed a restraining order request against you, claiming you've been harassing her and stalking her property." "What? That's insane." "I have proof. I know. It's a common tactic. When fraudsters are cornered, they go on the attack. They muddy the waters, create confusion, make themselves look like the victim. It's BS, and the judge will see through it. But it means tomorrow's hearing is going to be more complicated than I expected." "Will we still win?" Henderson paused. "Yes, we'll win. But Barbara is fighting dirty. This might get ugly. Are you prepared for that?" "I don't have a choice." "No, you don't. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow we go to war." I couldn't sleep that night. I kept imagining Barbara in court, playing the victim, crying about being harassed by some crazy man claiming to own her home. I imagined the judge believing her, like the police had. But I also thought about Michael Davidson, Patricia Holmes, Sarah Chun, and all Barbara's other victims. They'd fought and won. So had I. Tuesday morning, I put on my best suit and drove to the courthouse. Henderson met me outside at 8:30 a.m. Remember? he said. "Stay calm. Don't react to anything Barbara says, no matter how outrageous. Let me handle this. You're just here to answer questions honestly and calmly." We walked into the courtroom, and there, sitting at the defendant's table with her lawyer, was Barbara. She looked different. She was wearing a simple dress, minimal makeup, her hair styled softly. She looked like someone's grandmother. Harmless. Vulnerable. She looked at me and smiled. Not a big smile. Just that same small, satisfied smile she'd given me when the police made me leave, like she'd already won. But what neither of us knew yet, what I was about to discover during the hearing, was that Barbara had made one critical mistake. One mistake that would bring her entire scheme crashing down. Have you ever had to fight a legal battle against a con artist? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The justice system is supposed to protect us, but sometimes it protects the criminals instead. Judge Margaret Chun entered the courtroom at exactly 9 a.m. She was in her 60s, with sharp eyes, and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie imaginable. "Be seated. KCV-20-4-8-7-6-3. Chun versus Whitmore. Mr. Henderson, you're representing the plaintiff?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Marcus Chun, legal owner of 23 Maple Drive." "Ms. Whitmore, you're representing yourself?" Barbara stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I couldn't afford an attorney. I'm just a retiree on fixed income, trying to protect my home." She raised her hand to her chest vulnerability. Judge Chun's expression didn't change. "Mr. Henderson, present your case." Henderson walked forward. "Your Honor, this is straightforward fraud and criminal trespass. Marcus Chun purchased 23 Maple Drive in March of 2022. When he returned from Singapore April 20th, he discovered Ms. Whitmore had moved in with forged documents. He pulled out folders, Exhibit a property deed, Exhibit B 2 years, mortgage payments. Exhibit C tax records, Exhibit D photos of Mr. Chun living there. Exhibit E lease with legitimate tenant Jennifer Parker. Judge Chun examined each. "Ms. Whitmore, do you dispute Mr. Chun owns this property?" Barbara stood, perfect confusion on her face. "Your Honor, I don't know who owns it. I rented from Chun Property Management LLC. Valid lease, paid rent monthly. If there's fraud, I'm a victim too." "Let's see your lease." Barbara handed over her folder. Judge Chun read silently. "This shows September 1st, 2023 start date. Mr. Henderson, your client lived there then, correct?" "Correct. He didn't leave until January. This lease is fabricated." Judge Chun looked at Barbara. "If Mr. Chun lived there in September, how could you also be living there?" Barbara showed distress. "I was living there. I moved in September 1st. Never saw him before he broke into my home Saturday." "She's lying." I burst out. "Mr. Chun," Judge Chun said sharply, "speak only when addressed." "Yes, Your Honor." "Sorry," Henderson continued. Exhibit F12 neighbor statements confirming Mr. Chun lived there until January, saw Ms. Whitmore moving in during November, not September. Judge Chun read them. Barbara's face flickered worry showing through. Exhibit G, Jennifer Parker's statement. She lived there January 15th to March 15th. Ms. Whitmore harassed them, claiming to be landlord. Barbara raised her hand. "I never met Jennifer Parker." Fabricated testimony. "We'll determine that," Judge Chun said. "Continue." Most importantly, Exhibit H. Henderson pulled out thick papers, court records showing Ms. Whitmore was convicted in this county 3 counts real estate fraud, 2 counts identity theft, 1 count forgery, June 2020. 3 years prison, released December 2022. A method then fake leases, utility transfers, forged documents identical to now. The courtroom went silent, Barbara's mask cracked anger showing. "Your Honor," Barbara's voice rose, "that was years ago. Primera served time. I'm rehabilitated." He's using my past to steal my home. Your home. Judge Chun's eyebrows rose. You claim to be a tenant. Which is it? Barbara faltered. The home I'm renting. My residence? Judge Chun fixed her with a stare. You claim you paid rent to Chun Property Management LLC since September. Prove this company exists. Corporate registration. Business license. Barbara pulled out papers. I have the lease. Company name is here. That's not what I asked. Secretary of State registration proving this company exists. I don't have that. I'm just a tenant. Why would I have landlord's registration? Because reasonable people verify they're dealing with legitimate companies, especially someone convicted of real estate fraud who should know these scams. Barbara's face reddened. I'm the victim. Let me finish. Mr. Henderson, did your client create Chun Property Management? No, Your Honor. Verified with Secretary of State. No. Such company exists. Complete fabrication. Judge Chun turned to Barbara. You claim you paid rent. To who? What bank account? Barbara's throat worked. I paid by check. To Chun Property Management LLC. P.O. Box 3-4-7-8. Double quotes, show me bank statements proving you withdrew this money. I don't have them, Your Honor. Why not? You knew this was a hearing about your tenancy. Why no financial records? Barbara raised her hand helplessly. Didn't know I needed them. Thought checks were sufficient. Convenient, Judge Chun said dryly. Mr. Henderson, evidence where these payments went. Yes, Your Honor. Henderson's confidence showed. I hired a private investigator. Exhibit I. Whitmore's bank records for 8 months. No withdrawals matching these checks. No payments to any property management company. These checks were never cashed or deposited anywhere. Barbara's eyes went wide. That's private. You can't. That's invasion of privacy. Obtained through legal discovery, Henderson said smoothly. The checks are forgeries. She created fake canceled checks to support her fake lease. She's been living free since November, using forged documents. This is outrageous. Barbara stood, persona falling away. You're violating my privacy. Judge Chun. I object. Sit down, Ms. Whitmore. You lost the right to object when you committed fraud. Mr. Henderson, more. Yes. Exhibit J. Utility records showing Ms. Whitmore transferred services from Mr. Chun's name to hers in November while he still lived there. Companies confirmed someone claiming to be property owner made these transfers. My landlord told me to put utilities in my name. Barbara protested. Your landlord who doesn't exist? Judge Chun asked. Barbara's mouth opened and closed. No answer. One more critical piece. Exhibit K. HOA records showing Ms. Whitmore has been HOA president since January 2023. This position gave her access to homeowner information, knowledge of who travels when properties are vacant. He pulled out emails, violation notices Ms. Whitmore sent Mr. Chun throughout 2023 before moving in. She systematically harassed him, drove him out. When he left for Singapore, she took her opportunity. Judge Chun read the notices. Barbara's emotions cycled: anger, fear, desperation. She raised her hand pleadingly. Those notices were legitimate HOA business. Every resident. Judge Chun interrupted. Evidence of how violations were distributed. Yes. Statements from 11 residents. 10 had similar violations, but never got notices. Only Mr. Chun was targeted. The 11th witness, Ms. Whitmore, saying Mr. Chun was temporary and wouldn't be a problem much longer. Barbara laughed harsh, bitter. That's hearsay. Mrs. Patterson will testify under oath, Henderson said calmly. Judge Chun removed her glasses. Her expression showed barely contained anger. Ms. Whitmore, I've been a judge 23 years. This is among the most calculated, malicious fraud I've seen. You used your HOA position to target a homeowner, harassed him until he left, then moved into his house with forged documents. You created fake companies, leases, checks, utility transfers. You manipulated police into removing the actual owner, all within 2 years of prison for identical crimes. Barbara started to speak, but Judge Chun held up her hand sharp. Definitive. I'm not finished. You positioned yourself as community leader while planning fraud. You targeted Mr. Chun specifically because you knew from HOA duties that he traveled for work. This wasn't opportunistic, this was premeditated. Systematic fraud. Your Honor, please, Barbara's voice cracked. Here is my ruling. Marcus Chun is legal owner of 23 Maple Drive since March 2020. Barbara Whitmore has no legal right and has been trespassing since November. All her documents are fraudulent. Judge Chun looked directly at Barbara. You're ordered to vacate within 24 hours. If you fail, the sheriff physically removes you. You must return all Mr. Chun's property. You're ordered to pay restitution of $47,000 for legal fees, hotel costs, property damage, and stolen property. $47,000. Not enough for what I'd lost, but justice. Furthermore, I'm referring this to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. You face charges of fraud, forgery, identity theft, trespass, and parole violation. You'll likely return to prison for significant time. Barbara's face crumpled. She raised both hands to her face. But no tears, just rage. This is ridiculous, she shouted. He should be prosecuted. He abandoned his property. Premeta, improved it, I made it a home. Bailiff, Judge Chun said quietly. The bailiff moved toward Barbara, but she turned to me, pointing with shaking finger. You think you've won? I'll appeal. That house should be mine. I deserve it. You don't even live there. I renovated the kitchen. I painted walls. I planted roses. It's my house. Ms. Whitmore, the bailiff said firmly, taking her arm. Let's go. Barbara tried to pull away, still screaming as they escorted her out, voice echoing until a door cut it off. The courtroom was silent. Judge Chun looked at me, expression softening. Mr. Chun, I apologize for what you've been through. Our system failed you. I'm directing the sheriff to escort you to your property today and ensure Ms. Whitmore's removal is completed. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm issuing a restraining order. She cannot come within 500 feet of you or your property. Violation means immediate arrest. This court is adjourned. Henderson and I walked out into May sunshine. I could finally breathe. We won, I said. We destroyed her. Henderson smiled. Those bank records showing checks were never cashed. Killing blow. When do I get my house? Sheriff will call by tonight. Tomorrow morning, you should be able to move back in. That evening, Sheriff Deputy Williams called at 7 p.m. Mr. Chun, we've completed the eviction. Ms. Whitmore has been removed. I need to warn you she didn't go quietly. She destroyed some property, but the house is secure. You can come home. I drove to Meadowbrook Hills with pounding heart. Deputy Williams waited on my porch. How bad is it? See for yourself. Brace yourself. I walked inside. Paint smell hit first. Barbara had spray-painted obscenities on living room walls. She'd hammered kitchen cabinets, poured concrete down drains, torn up carpet sections, but she hadn't taken my grandmother's clock. It sat on the mantel, unharmed. My photo albums were stacked in a closet, untouched. Pure spite, Deputy Williams said, calculated for maximum damage. But your insurance should cover it as criminal damage. She faced additional charges. I walked through my house cataloging damage, but feeling relief. It was mine. Barbara was gone. I could repair this. 3 weeks later, repainting the living room, my doorbell rang. Jim, from number 4. Hey! Marcus! Welcome bike. Did you hear about Barbara? What? She got arrested yesterday, trying to leave the state. Violated parole by committing new crimes. Judge sentenced her to 8 years prison. Maximum sentence. She'll serve full time, no early release. 8 years. Barbara would be 70 when released. One more thing. Jim grinned. HOA held emergency election. New president, new board. We abolished 80% of Barbara's ridiculous rules. No more violation notices for garden hoses. We're a normal neighborhood again. I really laughed for the first time in weeks. That night, I sat on my repaired porch, looking at my house. It cost $47,000. Weeks of stress, months of repairs. But it was mine. Barbara was behind bars, unable to hurt anyone else. Sometimes, justice takes time. Sometimes, it takes fighting. Sometimes it takes every ounce of documentation and determination you have. But when justice finally comes, it's worth every second of the wait. The end justice prevailed, but it took fighting for it. If you ever face a situation like this, document everything, hire a good attorney, and never give up. Have you ever had to fight for what's rightfully yours? Share your victory stories in the comments. We all need to know that good people can win. Thank you for following this insane journey with me. Remember, always trust your gut, always document everything, and never let a Barbara take what's yours. What would you do? Write your comments.